the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. With 41,000 people, Covington, Kentucky is the 5th largest city in Kentucky and also the 5th largest city in the Cincinnati metropolitan region. Since the 1980s, it has developed a distinctive skyline that complements the Cincinnati skyline, and in recent years has joined other older cities across the country to capitalize on the resurgence of interest in urban living. That was symbolized by the ribbon cutting 2 weeks ago on the Hotel Covington, which most recently served as City Hall, but was originally built in 1908 as Coppin's department store and was the first skyscraper in Kentucky. On November 8th, Covington voters will elect 4 city commissioners and the mayor. In the commission race, 2 incumbents are running, but 2 seats are vacant, meaning at least 2 new people will join the commission. In the mayor's race, the 2 candidates on the ballot were chosen from a field of 4 candidates in the May primary. Both the candidates for the commission and the candidates for the mayor run on a nonpartisan ballot. I am joined this morning by the 2 mayoral candidates. Carran is the current mayor of Covington, completing her first 4-year term. Prior to being elected mayor, she served 3 2-year terms on the Covington City Commission. Ms. Carran has a degree in architecture from the University of Cincinnati. Beyond her role as mayor, she also serves on the Kenton County Governance Study Group, the Green Umbrella, the Regional Trails Alliance, the Northern Kentucky Heroin Impact Task Force, and other things. Joe Meyer has been active in public service for over 30 years. Mr. Meyer has served in the Kentucky legislature for 15 years, both as a representative and a senator. He served as the secretary of the Kentucky Education and Workforce Development Council and as a senior policy advisor to Governor Steve Beshear. He is a graduate of Chase College of Law and holds a master's degree in urban affairs from St. Louis University. Welcome to Newsmakers. I will just say that I was with two of you yesterday at the Covington Business Council, so we've spent a lot of time together.
Yes.
This has been fun getting to know the 2 of you better. So let's begin by, Sherry, let me just ask you this question. What are the most important things that are happening in Covington right now that if you were re-elected mayor, you would like to see continue, expand, develop, etc.?
First, the positive energy that we have right now. I think when this started, it's been growing over a period of years, but I think in the beginning, there were some people who thought it was going to be short-lived, and that hasn't been the case. And so we've got people now investing in the city. We have our residents who feel like there is change for them, positive change for them, and we have new residents coming into the area, including families. And I want to keep that momentum going. I don't want to have anybody question whether their investment is worthwhile or not.
Joe, what about you?
Well, this is a continuation of a trend that started more than 40 years ago. For example, I was one of the urban pioneers amongst the very first families into Seminary Square when it was a risky venture. And I've seen the Seminary Square neighborhood, the Wallace Woods neighborhood, the Licking Riverside neighborhood, the West Side, the Mainstrasse Village Association neighborhood, all continue to improve over the past 40 years to where there are some very desirable neighborhoods now. And the objective is to continue the trend into other parts of the city so that we can enjoy the quality of life that's present in a delightful river city.
Okay. One of the most important things for any urban center is jobs, attracting jobs. And there was this recent announcement that CTI is going to move into the riverfront complex, and ultimately, over a long period of time, they say they'll bring 500 good-paying jobs. Mm-hmm. So that's a good win. Joe, what do you think the city of Covington needs to do to attract more businesses, more jobs?
Well, attracting jobs has to be the top priority for the city government, in the sense that it's the payroll tax that constitutes 45% or so of the budget. And the unfortunate thing is that the payroll tax receipts have been going down for 6 years. There are fewer jobs in the city today than there were in 2010. And along the way, we've lost a lot of jobs. So St. Elizabeth Hospital moved out, Omnicare moved across the river, Nielsen moved across the river. Green Sky was a great startup in Covington that moved out to Crestview Hills. So one of the first things we have to do is keep what we have, so we're not dealing with the subtractions. The second thing that we need to do is to begin to connect better the physical environment of the city so that it's a more attractive city. And part of the challenge of doing that is dealing with the social service issues that are confronting Covington. I mean, when I talk to employers, they say they don't want to move to Covington because of the number of homelessness on the street. When I'm dealing with people, they say they don't want to come to Covington to shop because they're afraid. When Keith Bird was interim president of Gateway, he talked to the people at Gateway Community and Technical College. He surveyed his staff at the Two River Center, and their number one concern was fear for their personal safety. And it all revolves around the dominant street traffic that's in the city. And quite frankly, the city has to begin to deal with some of those big picture issues to make it more desirable.
So this started out talking about jobs. Joe's approach is it's the total environment, social environment, other things. What's the city have to do to attract more businesses, new jobs?
So just a little correction to the figures. It was announced just recently that the IRS will be moving their one facility out by 2019. And actually that payroll revenue from the IRS flat top building is about 1.5 million a year to our general budget. And that's actually about 3% of our general budget. In 2014, our fiscal year 2015, our payroll revenue increased by 2.5%. And our fiscal year 2016 increased by 4.8%, and it's expected to increase this coming fiscal year. So basically in 3 years, we've made up way more than that difference. The things that we are doing right now, improving our infrastructure, to Joe's point, the physical appearance of our city is very important. With my degree in architecture, that's one of the things I've been focusing on. And we've been getting utilities underground when we do streetscaping, which has been huge. And we actually have 3 more streetscaping projects in the works. Over the last 5 years, we've brought in close to $15 million in road funds to make those improvements. Regarding the safety issue, I was at Hotel Covington the other night, and the comment was made, how cool is this that when you're downtown Covington, you see young couples, empty nesters riding their bikes and walking the streets. And actually, Jean Shore with the Catalytic Fund, the one night she was running by Hotel Covington and everybody pulled her in, which if you know Jean, she likes to be everything just right in place. But you would not have seen that 6 years, 7 years, 8 years ago.
But what about, is the homelessness issue that Joe raises, is it a particular problem in Covington, and is there any sort of plan to deal with it?
Yes. So Joe recently has been talking about we need to do more like Lexington and Louisville, and that's what we have been doing. So the emergency cold shelter right now, they have a summer program where they select individuals, men, who really want to get out of the position that they're in. So they try to create a stable base where they get them into recovery if needed, find jobs for them and get them into apartments. Actually, in the last 2 years, our homeless population has actually dropped by 47%, according to the last housing count. The other thing that I've done is the National League of Cities has taken on veteran homelessness. I was the first mayor in the state of Kentucky to sign on to that. And because of that, we have now prioritized our veterans in our public housing and in our Section 8 program.
Joe, if you were elected mayor, what would you do about about homelessness? It's not an easy issue to deal with.
No, it's not, but the city of Covington has never taken any steps as a city government to try to put together a response to homelessness. So I would start with a multiple step plan. Number one, I would get into the details of what exactly is the nature of our homeless problem. So for example, when I visited the cold shelter, they said 40% of the people who come there have jobs. Well, homelessness for a person with a job is different than homelessness for a person who's got psychological or other problems. So we need to find out what the nature of the problem is. We need to discuss the concentration of social service agencies in Covington and how to share that burden. We need to have public discussions about the alternative treatment methodologies that are available. We've never had those in Covington. So for example, is a housing first approach, maybe one that the city should take. Are there situations where the burden of the social service problem should be shared across more entities in northern Kentucky? But it should be done openly. It should be done through a task force that involves Covington residents making policy recommendations to the City Commission, and then the City Commission should make some decisions.
Has the City of Covington interacted with Strategies to End Homelessness on this side of the river, which has made, dealt with a lot of these same issues that you, Joe just brought up in terms of understanding and changing approaches, housing first, for example. Is there any cross collaboration with Strategies to End Homelessness?
Yes, and actually we just signed a kind of an MOU with the people who run the new drop-in center. So they're going to be trying to work over here in Covington, northern Kentucky, to provide other housing opportunities that are more affordable, and that hasn't begun yet. We just signed that agreement. The other thing is that when Ernie Fletcher was governor, he had a task force about what are the causes of homelessness and how do you begin to address those. So there was an initiative there. Regarding spreading out the burden, we've had discussions with Judge Pendry in Campbell County and Judge Bohr in Boone County, because the homeless that we have are coming from Campbell and Boone County as well. Judge Pendry's been very receptive to that. Actually, when we have the severe cold weather, they actually create spaces for the overflow, because that's when we really struggle.
Okay, I want to turn to another topic, and that's the riverfront. So the Covington riverfront was once the envy of Cincinnati, with Covington landing BB riverboats, Jeff Ruby's and Mike Fink. Today it's pretty vacant, and the action is more in Newport and Cincinnati. How important is revitalizing the Covington riverfront, and do you think that the new plan is workable? Let's start, I think, with Sherry.
Okay. So the riverfront plan, we just got word from the Corps of Engineers that part of it has been approved, so we've been waiting 1.5 years for that. The plan itself is involved.
I want to reinforce that, because people who aren't involved in this sort of thing don't realize the influence of the Army Corps of Engineers on anything along the river. 1.5 years. People wonder why it took Cincinnati so long. It wasn't just the Army Corps of Engineers, but working with the Army Corps of Engineers does take time.
Yes,
so go ahead.
Does. And so the plan that we have is evolved over a long period of time. I was involved in some of the meetings before I was even on commission. So there's been amazing public input on the project. But we've been working with Wolpert and Human Nature. Human Nature was involved in some of the design work with the banks. And the plan we have, we think, is solid. It's actually now, we're going to be very close to sending it out to an RFP. We've created an overlay zone to help activate the spaces, and we've done that with kind of the working with Willie Carden from Cincinnati Parks. We actually just recently went down to Louisville to see how they've been implementing theirs. But we hope to break ground on the western part of the riverfront soon. I know people would like to see Jeff Ruby and the floating restaurants come back, But the problem is that the dynamics of our riverbank is very different than the dynamics of the Newport riverbank. The Licking River coming out and all the debris.
Silts things up.
Yeah, and because of the curve, we have that curve right there.
Right.
So the floating restaurants have found that it's too hard on the hull of the boat. But working with Jeff Ruby, he's going to be part of the riverfront plan right now.
Joe, what do you think about the plan and how important is the riverfront?
Well, the plan is essentially for a nice park and walking trails, and I think that's marvelous. It doesn't directly help the city with its need for reinvestment and job growth. And it does take away parking places that are in rare supply, in short supply in Covington. It will also create a demand for greater management and ongoing investment in the maintenance and the management of the activities there that the city can't afford right now. And it will also compete with other recreation areas, public gathering areas in the city. So there's a balance there. And to me, it's not a question of whether it's a good thing. It's a great thing if we can afford it. It's a matter of timing.
So you don't think it's the right time to do this?
Well, I think there are parts that should, we've got money in hand. The South Bank did a great job working with the state. I think South Bank got the city $3.9 million in federal money to begin this process. So, we should put the bones there, but it's like working on an old building or an old city. You do what you can while you can, and then you can continual improvement over time.
Sherry, very quickly.
So actually, the riverfront's very important. It's one of the things that CTI really stirred their interest, and we have other businesses that are also viewing that. That's the gateway into Kentucky and Covington. So it's very important. It's also, we're not trying to compete with Cincinnati's riverbank. We want to complement each other, just as Newport is. Joe made the comment that South Bank got the $3.9 million for the river, and yes, working with South Bank has been a huge help. We work together, but that $3.9 million came because of my relationship with Governor Beshear.
Okay. We're going to have to take a little break, real quick.
Well, she mentioned CTI. Look, she also talked about, she contradicted me on tax payroll receipts. There has not been any organic growth in payroll tax in Covington. It's smoke and mirrors. There are accounting adjustments, but there has not been organic growth in payroll and jobs in Covington in the last 6 years.
I have to take a break right now, so stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break, and Joe and Sherry will be staying right here. Welcome back. This morning I'm joined by the candidates for the mayor of Covington. Joe Meyer is a lifelong Covington resident with deep experience in state government. Joe is the challenger. Sherry Carran is the incumbent mayor of Covington, finishing her first term in office. I want to get to what is really a major regional issue, and that is the bridge. And Joe, you have recently said, when we were together, that you not only don't support tolls on a new Brent Spence bridge, you don't support anything being built at the Brent Spence.
No, that's a little broader than what I said.
What did you say then?
I said that the scale of the Brent Spence Bridge project is far disproportionate to the size of our community and destroys and divides our community. It needs to be fixed, but the scope of the project should be downsized and be more proportionate to the legitimate need of the community.
So let's, but do you then, well, let me move on. Let me just ask Sherry about that. Do you believe that the plan, which is a second bridge right next to the Brent Spence,
it's quadrupling the size of the bridge there,
is out of proportion and not needed and unwise?
It's way bigger than I think people will realize, and not just in the width, but it's also going to be higher. So yeah, that is a concern to me, but it was our former city leaders and business leaders who wanted the I-75 corridor where it is, and to do nothing when it's there and let it deteriorate. It's already dividing our city. Port Lewisburg has been in limbo for almost 15 years because of not knowing what's going to happen with the bridge. We've been working with the cabinet, we've been working with the Cincinnati side to come up with a plan that works for both of us to stop progress that affects this whole region, this whole middle section of the United States would be wrong. The city depends upon that, as does all the cities that line the corridor. We're doing everything we can to make those ramps coming into Covington appealing and safer, and I believe that with the improvements that's planned right now, actually access to Covington will be better, and we can begin development of Lewisburg.
Joe, do you prefer the Eastern Corridor?
Well, I think the case that's been made for the Eastern Corridor definitely should be looked at. The numbers come from seem to be well-founded. Governor Bevin is committed to having it studied. If the Eastern Bypass is proven to be valid, then that investment there has the effect of adding one whole lane to the Brent Spence Bridge corridor. It will reduce traffic on the bridge by 25%. And when you reduce traffic on the bridge by 25%, you know, you're making major progress.
Will tolls be necessary to build the Eastern Bypass?
Not necessarily. There are other alternatives that might be available, such as tax increment financing districts. If you have a Cincinnati Eastern Bypass, you're going to see a ton of economic development occur along that route. I mean, you think back in northern Kentucky 50 years ago when I-75 was put in, and since then, all of Boone County's growth, similar economic growth along the Eastern Bypass, and take some of those proceeds and use it to pay for the road.
Sherry, how do you feel about the Eastern Bypass?
So at some point in time, the Eastern Bypass will probably be needed, but to prioritize that over the I-75 bridge, the Brent Spence Bridge, is harmful. It's harmful for the city of Covington and for our region. Harmful for most of the part because it's our emergency responders who respond to the accidents and the cars breaking down. There was one accident about a year and a half ago where every firefighter and every police officer was called to that bridge for an accident. That we have probably an average of 7 calls a week.
What about the question of tolls? Where do you stand on tolls?
So I don't like tolls. I've been presented as pro-toll. My stand is that if tolls are needed to build the bridge, I support them if they're within a reasonable amount. We've been told they are not the $5 to $8 range that the anti-toll folks like to see. Every major infrastructure project regarding a bridge in the United States has a tolling component, and to think ours is not, I don't think is realistic.
Joe?
On the tolls, $2 is the toll. At $2 a trip, it's still $1,000 a year tax on somebody coming across the river to work. The toll on trucks is significantly higher, $8, $12, $15. A lot of neighborhood businesses go back and forth across the river. That bridge design devastates Covington. It eviscerates the rest of Lewisburg. It has terrible damage to the businesses that are there, and Covington should not pay the price for a regional good.
Okay, I've got less than 1 minute left. I want to ask the question, have you thought, would you consider extending, as I think Newport has toyed with, extending the Cincinnati streetcar, the Cincinnati Bell Connector, over to Covington? Because it's at Southern Loop, it's right there by Covington, it's right by the river. Joe?
Where's the money coming from?
I'm asking if you
have
talk about development. That's what it's already done.
Covington is far more than 6th Street North. 90% of the people in Covington live outside. Their needs have to come before a streetcar.
Very quickly.
So I've been criticized just for wanting to be part of the discussion. Unless we're part of the discussion, we don't know whether it's a fit for us or not.
Okay. Thank you very much. If you want to learn more about these two candidates, they both have excellent websites. You can go to meyerforcovington.com or sherrycarran.com and find out where they stand on other issues as well as the ones we had time to talk about this morning. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Remember, all of our election interviews are online. You can check up before you vote. And be sure to join us next week when we're going to be joined by Steve Shabbat for the U.S. Congressman and his opponent, Michelle Young. Pardon me, I just got confused. Thank you very much. Have a good week.
Sure.